cynicism is gone.
Hello everyone, Joshua Myers here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Netflix original film Fear Street Part 1, 1994 from 2021. Fear Street Part 1 stars Kiana Madiri, I think that's how you pronounce her name, Olivia Scott Welch, Benjamin Flores Jr., and it's directed by Leigh Yaniak. The plot of Fear Street Part 1 is that after a series of brutal slayings, a teen and her friends take on an evil force that has plagued their notorious town for centuries. Now, before I would get into this review, I would like to say something. Now, I know Fear Street, like these new movies are based off of R.L. Stine books. They were kind of like, it's basically more like if Goosebumps was meant for children, it was children's horror, then Fear Street was more for teenagers and that. And here's the thing, I never read any of the Fear Street books. Never. I was a Goosebumps person. I grew up with Goosebumps. That was the one I read. That's the one I watched quite like the most. And I watched the Goosebumps show from the 90s. Loved the hell out of that. So even a while ago, I watched and reviewed the Goosebumps movies on my old channel, which you're going to see the reviews on this channel. So I don't really know much about the Fear Street books or anything like that, but from what I know, these movies have very little connection to the books. I just started to watch these because, well, heard really good things about them, and so what I think of the first Fear Street movie, let's dive right into that. The pacing is actually decent. It's not bad, but it could be better, and I'll explain that in my negatives. But for the most part, I didn't feel like I was watching an incredibly long movie. I liked the cinematography in this film. I liked some of the vibrant colors in that. There's a lot of like blues and purples, which is what I'm doing here. I have a lot of blues, purples. I had a bit of like kind of like warm colors here for this video too. I'll probably do something similar depending on what I see with Fear Street Part 2 and Part 3. So I like that. I love the cinematography of this movie. Also too, I actually kind of like the music first. In fact, the music gave me a very like Scream-esque vibe. It felt like the music from Scream. Also too, I liked the acting. The acting was actually pretty good. The characters on the other hand, we'll talk about that in my negative, like kind of, I guess you could say mixed thoughts, because actually I won't do mixed thoughts. I'll discuss some of the things I liked about the characters right now. There were a couple characters I did like, actually. There's a lot of romance story stuff going on throughout this movie, which I won't get into spoilers, like between the main characters and that. And honestly, there was kind of a bit of romance between a couple of the side characters. I actually grown more. Like, I was more invested in the side characters' love story than I was with the main character's love story. I guess because they were like more of a believable couple, I could tell. And again, I'll discuss all this in my negatives. But honestly, for me, also the special effects are actually pretty good. That's another positive. Other than that, that's it with my positives. Moving on to my negatives now. My biggest negative is the characters. Now, there were only a couple characters, like I mentioned, that I really did like. But the rest of them, I mean, they weren't awful. It's just I didn't know any of these characters. They took some time to settle and like let me get to know them as people. In fact, a lot of them were actually kind of, I wouldn't say people really. They were just either plot devices or stereotypes. There was some stuff like, for example, the main kind of couple of this movie, without getting into spoilers again, they just showed that they were breaking up and everything, you know, due to certain things, and then kind of start to bloom their romance again while over the course of this movie. And honestly, I would have liked to see what they were like as couples prior, because I didn't really know what, like, they just explained. And that's another issue too. There's a lot of explaining in this movie. Almost like the film thinks we're so dumb that we can't fill in the gaps ourselves. And since I know this is more of a teenager horror film, that's rated R, you know, because Fear Street is more towards teenagers and that, and it's right there saying it's a teen movie, so it's like teenagers are a bit smarter than you give them credit for, and it just seems like you're trying to dumb them down. It's like, I don't know, there's just some things I would have done differently in regards to how to, you know, set up these characters and get the audience really to get to care about these characters. Again, there were only 2 I really cared about, but they weren't in the movie for very long, and again, without giving any spoilers. Again, stereotypical characters, like you got the stock goalies and stuff like that. It really felt like Stephen King type cliches, really. But if you know me, I'm not a big fan on the Stephen King cliches. I'm not. Because of that, I felt like the pacing kind of dragged a bit. That's why I said it's kind of a mixed thing with me on the pacing. I think it could have definitely been better if you had more characters you could, more characters you could root for and everything like that. Have more emotional attachment to. And honestly, for me, that's it with my negatives. So let's move on to my rating. So with that said, I'm going to give Fear Street Part 1, 1994, a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, for me, I think it's just okay. It's actually a little bit better than okay. There's some things I would have definitely done differently, to make it like a 4 out of 5 star movie or something like that, but it's okay. It's serviceable. It's a little bit more better than okay, and I did have somewhat of fun watching it with Josh. Actually, me and Josh watched it. He liked it more than I did, which we're going to try to review Fear Street Part 2, 1978, and we'll before we actually got into our thoughts in that, I'll have him share his thoughts on the first film since he got to join me on this review, so but he did like it more than I did, but I had fun watching it with him, so it is a fun watch, especially if you watch it with a friend. Now, would I personally recommend Fear Street Part 1? It depends, really. It depends on what's your taste, really. I mean, for me, I found it to be a little bit better, okay, but I know there's some people who really love this movie so far. So, I don't know. It just really depends. It's not a horrible movie. I've seen way worse movies than this. Way worse. Like, again, you have your Hellraiser Revelations, you have your Black Christmas 2006 remakes and stuff like that. You have your Fog remakes, all that stuff. Seen and reviewed way worse movies. Of course, there's going to be obvious comparison to Goosebumps, which Goosebumps a while ago had their own movies made. One in 2015 and then one in 2019, both starring Jack Black in that. And personally, if you ask me which one I think is better, Fear Street Part 1 versus the 2015 Goosebumps, they're pretty even. There are some things I think Fear Street Part 1 does better than the 2015 Goosebumps movie, and then there's some things I think Goosebumps did better. Again, I personally like the characters a bit better in the Goosebumps movie than I did in this Fear Street movie, but there's some things in here that Fear Street Part 1 did that personally I felt like Goosebumps should have done, was just make it a rated R horror movie, for the people who grew up reading the Goosebumps books and for the people who grew up with the 90s show. This is kind of almost what I wanted the Goosebumps 2015 movie to be. And there's some things that I like better. It's just kind of a mixed thing with me. So that's it for this review. Tell me in the comments if you've seen Fear Street Part 1 or have seen the entire trilogy, and what you thought of the first film or thought of the other films or the whole trilogy. Without any spoilers, if I see any spoiler comments, your comments will be removed. Because I have yet to see the rest of the trilogy. I have yet to see Fear Street Part 2 and 3. So just, again, tell me in the comments what you guys thought. Make sure to like this video. And if you're new to this channel, click subscribe. I plan on pushing out more content and everything. So if you like what you see here, just click the subscribe button. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.